Incredible moment revealed. Shy intern's touching sign language inspires CEO and transforms lives. Emily sat at her desk, invisible amid the whirlwind of assertive voices in sharp suits. The office buzzed with affluent chatter, but her heartbeat sounded louder than the din around her. She was just an intern, a fly on the wall in this corporate hive, raised far from the polished world of business meetings by a single mother working 2 jobs. Over the years, Emily learned that hard work didn't always translate to recognition. Each day, she watched the confident blur of colleagues passing by, drowning in their discussions, their laughter spilling out like champagne. Emily's trembling hands often sunk beneath the desk, where her vivid gift, American Sign Language, went unnoticed. It was more than just a tool. It was a bridge to her deaf brother, a way to speak without words, to reach into hearts and touch them with silent beauty. One day, during a particularly heated meeting, Emily noticed Carlos, the elderly employee who sat in the corner, his voice drowned out by the flood of younger, flashier ideas. She felt something within her stir, a pulsing desire to make him visible. In a moment of quiet defiance, she began to sign his words as they were spoken, turning his muted contributions into vibrant expressions. The room fell silent, heads turning, eyes widening in disbelief. Mark, the ambitious young CEO, caught in his own web of privilege and self-doubt, noticed. He saw more than just an intern. He saw a spark, a call for empathy. He felt the power behind Emily's motions, the beauty in her silent act of bravery. It was a revelation that rippled through him, challenging everything he'd learned about status and success. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As days passed, Emily and Mark's connection deepened in those quiet moments shared over coffee breaks, exchanging stories that revealed their struggles and dreams. Each time Emily signed, the office transformed. Walls fell, barriers crumbled. They began to see the faces behind the titles, each person a story worthy of being told. But the corporate machine was relentless. Pressures mounted, and Mark found himself torn between what his family expected from him and the authenticity that Emily had brought to light. He could feel a change brewing within him, yet doubt swirled like storm clouds. As they prepared for a community event aimed at uniting their diverse neighborhood, the stakes raised higher. Tension thickened, hinting at the fragility of change in an often unforgiving world. Their growing friendship teetered on the edge of something beautiful but uncertain, ready to redefine their paths. The night of the event shimmered with anticipation. Families began to gather, warm smiles illuminating the crowd. Emily stood at the front, preparing to sign once more, her heart pounding like a drum. Self-doubt fluttered in Mark's chest. Would this night bring the breakthrough they both needed, or shatter their delicate nascent bond? In that breathless moment, just as Emily raised her hands to sign, an unexpected twist threatened to shake everything they had built. The energy crackled in the air, with hopes hanging on a whisper, leaving everyone wondering, when the curtain lifts, will truth unite or divide? Emily took a deep breath, her hands hovering just above her chest. The sound of the crowd faded into a gentle hum, her pulse quickening as she readied herself. In that moment, she was both anxious and exhilarated. This was not just another sign language interpretation. This was a chance to speak volumes with her silence. It was a moment that could change everything. Across the sea of faces, Mark stood, feeling more than just the weight of the evening. His heart raced as he met her gaze. Her determination radiated like a beacon. He wanted to cheer her on, to let her know that it was okay to be vulnerable, to take risks. But just as the thought solidified in his mind, he noticed an unexpected figure among the crowd. His father, the notorious titan of the industry. The elder man swept through the gathering, his presence demanding attention. Murmurs spread among the attendees. His arrival commanded the room. Mark's throat tightened. This was not how he envisioned tonight unfolding. He could already picture his father's disapproval as Emily signed her heart out, a living tapestry contrasting against the monochrome business culture typically celebrated. As the audience settled, Emily began her performance. Each graceful motion unfolded like a story, pulling smiles from the faces of parents, children, and colleagues alike. There was something beautiful about the way she translated emotions into movement. Laughter erupted at her joyful expressions, and the warmth wrapped around her, igniting her courage. But amidst the applause, Mark felt a knot in his stomach. Could he stand by and let his father undermine this moment? The fear of rejection tugged at him. What if the spotlight turned to his family legacy, leaving Emily in the shadows once more? His thoughts spiraled, battling right and wrong. Would he step forward or remain chained to tradition? As Emily finished her piece, the crowd erupted in heartfelt applause, but one voice rose above the rest, his father's, sharp and unsettling. "This is not how we present ourselves. We are a business, not a charity." The disdain was palpable, slicing through the joy. Emily froze, her radiant smile faltering as she processed the words, hurt rippling through her. Caught in an emotional cascade, Mark's heart broke for her. He stepped away from the wall where he'd been standing, instinctively moving toward Emily. Confidence surged within him, a feeling that had been dormant for far too long, a fire that ignited only in her presence. He couldn't let his father's words crush her spirit. "Dad, stop!" Mark shouted, cutting through the chatter. The room quieted, and all eyes turned toward him, astonished. He continued, his voice steadier than he felt. "Emily is doing something incredible. She's bridging gaps and showing us a different side of ourselves, the very spirit we should embrace as a company." Gasps filled the air. Mark's father's face twisted in disbelief, while murmurs swept through the crowd. Emily looked at him, wide-eyed, a mix of surprise and hope in her expression. This was a pivotal moment, not just for her, but for Mark as well. Could this be the turning point that altered the narrative for both of them? The weight of the room shifted, all eyes on Mark as the energy began to crackle with a new possibility. But deep down inside, uncertainty flickered. What would this mean for their friendship? And if his father would retaliate, what would happen to everything Emily had built? As Mark stood there, ready to face whatever came next, everything felt like it was spiraling toward a new transformation. Would courage and compassion win the day, or would the chains of expectation tighten their grip? The truth still lingered, waiting for them to embrace it. The tension in the air was thick, charged with the potential for change, or the risk of everything falling apart. Mark's heart hammered at his chest. The sharp breaths around him felt like a tidal wave crashing against the rocks, each gasp increasing his pulse. He hadn't just defended Emily, he had exposed a rift within himself that he could no longer ignore. His father's sneer made it clear that this bold act wouldn't go unchallenged. Mark was now standing on a precipice, and he couldn't look back. Emily blinked, shock giving way to a flicker of hope. The applause that had filled the room began to fade, the crowd frozen in disbelief. Mark's declaration hung in the air, and for a moment everything felt suspended in time. But then the tension snapped like a taut string. "What did you say?" his father's voice boomed, icy and commanding. "This performance is a distraction. We're here for business, not some emotional display." Mark clenched his fists, the words cut deep. Memories flooded him, the countless times his father had scoffed at anything that deviated from their meticulously crafted vision. A business built on profit, on hard lines and cold deals, anything but this human connection. But Mark no longer wanted to play by those rules. "I said she's incredible, and if you can't see that, then you're the one who's out of touch." Mark's voice was steady now, amplifying his resolve. He had no idea where this courage was coming from, but it felt right, like a weight lifting from his shoulders. The murmurs in the crowd shifted, curiosity intertwining with disbelief. Some faces lit up with encouragement, while others appeared unsettled, unsure which side to take. Emily watched him, her eyes wide and glistening, and that glimmer ignited a flicker of confidence in Mark. He dared to hope that perhaps he could bring change. Being in business doesn't mean we lose our humanity. Isn't that what we sell ourselves? Quality? Compassion? Emily embodies that. She represents everything we should strive to be. Mark's heart raced as he spoke, his passion spilling out into the air. The tension twisted around him, a raw energy only Emily could inspire. His father stood there, seething. It was a power struggle, a battle of worlds colliding. Mark felt the eyes of the audience draw closer, a swirling mix of disbelief and admiration. He knew he was risking it all, his relationship with his father, his career, the status quo. But then, among the cacophony of silence, Emily reached out. With her hands clasped softly together, she began to sign, her movements smooth and fluid. Each gesture spoke of gratitude, sadness, and a deep-rooted strength that resonated with the rawness of her heart. The audience shifted, drawn into her world as she transformed the palpable tension into something beautifully fragile. She wasn't just a performer, she was a bridge that connected everyone present. The crowd leaned in, mesmerized, drawn back into a story they hadn't known was unfolding. With each sign, she painted a canvas of emotions that evoked tears and laughter, emotions that bonded them. Mark felt the atmosphere shift like a gentle breeze. He caught his breath, feeling anticipation swell within him. The power of the moment transformed him, reminding him that imperfection and vulnerability were worthy of applause. But just as she finished, a voice called out from the back of the room. This is all just a sideshow. It was one of his father's closest allies, a figure accustomed to the rigidity of the status quo. The moment felt fragile, poised on a knife's edge. Mark's stomach twisted. Would this sabotage everything Emily had built? Would the narrow-mindedness of tradition snuff out the light she had created? The question echoed like thunder in his mind. Caught between past loyalty and newfound courage, Mark realized he stood not only for Emily, but for every person hidden behind the veil of expectation. The fate of the evening was uncertain, hanging delicately in the balance. And in that stirring moment, something deeper awakened within him. What if this was more than just a performance? What if Emily was the embodiment of a change that could reforge the foundations of everything he had known? As the crowd erupted into a spellbound murmur, the stage set for a confrontation that could ripple through their lives, Mark lifted his gaze to Emily's, revealing a promise. Would they be brave enough to embark on this journey together, or would fear hold them captive? The answer lay in the resting silence, waiting to be discovered. The atmosphere crackled, thick with anticipation and raw emotion. Mark could feel every heartbeat in the room as if they were aligning with his own. The jibe from the back had shattered the fragile spell, and now uncertainty danced in the air, weaving through the crowd like a creeping fog. Emily stood, a beacon of strength, though her features betrayed the flicker of worry. Mark could see the tension under her practiced grace. This was her moment, and yet it felt threatened. He was about to step further into this arena of risk when a spark of determination surged through him. "Is it a sideshow when it inspires joy?" Mark challenged, his voice ringing out. "Is it a distraction when it brings people together?" His heart raced, but for the first time, it wasn't just fear driving him, it was hope. The audience shifted, some nodding, others glancing nervously at his father. Mark dared to lock eyes with Emily again. Their connection was now a lifeline. She smiled gently, and it filled him with energy, grounding him even as the storm brewed around them. "Art should be messy, unpredictable," he continued, pacing slightly, letting the intensity of his words roll over the crowd. Perhaps it's time we embrace the unpredictable and allow ourselves to feel, to connect. His father's jaw clenched, pressing his lips together tightly. The anger was palpable, radiating from him like heat from a flame. Yet, just behind that fury, Mark glimpsed something deeper. Fear? Regret? Or was it simply the challenge to his long-held beliefs? "I didn't raise you to be some idealistic dreamer," his father thundered. "You have responsibilities to uphold." Mark inhaled deeply, letting the words hang in the air before responding. "You taught me to be strong, but strength doesn't mean throwing away compassion. It doesn't mean turning away from what truly matters." A ripple of gasps slithered through the audience as Mark's words sank in. The fight didn't seem like just his, but one they all understood. Emily was no longer just a performer. To the crowd, she was a symbol of something much larger. And if this moment was about her, then it was about all of them. "Isn't it time we acknowledge what's real?" he asked, his voice softening but still firm. "Rather than living our lives in fear of judgment, why not embrace our humanity?" A wave of murmurs rose within the audience. People exchanged glances, some quietly nodding their heads, others biting their lips. Mark felt a shift. The balance of power was tipping. They were warming up to the truth he had just unleashed, a truth that resonated deep within their collective hearts. Emily began to sign again, her movements telling a story that echoed Mark's. He could see it unfold. She radiated warmth and resilience, transforming the tension into a dialogue among everyone present. Her fingers danced in the air, weaving a tapestry of hope. In that instant, Mark knew they were in this together, their lives intertwined in ways they hadn't expected. Each gesture and every word spoken carved a new path towards empathy and connection. But still, there loomed the threat of his father's influence. The weight of tradition clung to them like fog, and as the question surfaced again, would they embrace this new beginning or retreat into the shadows of conformity? Mark felt the air grow heavy again. Just then, a small voice piped up from the back. "What if we believe in more than one path?" It was a young woman whose wide eyes sparkled with determination. She stood taller, emboldened by Mark and Emily's courage. Mark's heart soared. Change was palpable. Now, with eyes wide open, they faced a moment suspended in time. Could this ripple of bravery push beyond one night, creating a wave of transformation in their lives and their community? And as he caught Emily's gaze once more, there was no turning back. They had sparked something profound, and the real question was, could they sustain it? What lay ahead would test their resolve. Could courage blaze a trail through every fear they had ever known? The murmurs in the room grew louder. Mark felt the weight of all those eyes watching, waiting for someone to take the next step. Emily's signing had ignited something in the crowd, a flicker of hope and determination that surged through the air. Mark's breath quickened, fueled by that spark. "Let's talk about the paths we've taken to get here," a man from the front row called out. His voice was steady, filled with newfound confidence. "I've spent years doing what I was told, following rules, never stepping outside the lines. But look where that's gotten me." He paused, glancing around the room, eyes glossy with emotion. "Stuck in a job that drains me." The energy shifted again as others began to share their stories. A woman spoke about the creative passion she had buried to fit into a mold. Another voiced the fear of pursuing dreams that felt too far out of reach. Each tale echoed the sentiments that Mark had just unleashed, building momentum and tearing down the walls of conformity piece by piece. Mark looked at Emily, who now radiated a confidence that matched those sharing their truths. Together, they were becoming more than just performers. They were catalysts for change. As Emily continued to sign, weaving in and out of the many stories, Mark felt his heart swell with every flick of her fingers. Her expression spoke volumes, cheering on their collective release from the chains of doubt. His father's gaze darkened further, frustration and disbelief etched across his face as he watched the tide turn against him. But Mark stood firm, open to the potential rallying around them. "And what about you?" he shouted over the growing crowd. "What on earth keeps you tethered to old ideals? What path will you choose?" In moments, silence enveloped the room, every face turned toward Mark, searching for answers. It was in this electric pause that an older man, grizzled and worn from years cast in shadows, stepped forward. "Fear," he said simply, his voice breaking slightly. "Fear of failing, fear of being laughed at, fear of feeling too much. For as long as I can remember, I chose consistent safety over chasing my true dreams." The honesty reverberated, collapsing whatever barriers still lingered. Tensions were dissipating, faces softening. There was a realization among the audience that they weren't alone, that this fear had rooted itself deep within them all. Mark felt a swell of compassion as he faced the man, meeting his eyes. "But why let that fear have the final say?" he urged. "We deserve to be more than defined by what holds us back." As the man nodded, the audience erupted in thoughtful whispers, ideas colliding as Mark's words ignited a dialogue everyone seemed hungry for. It was a fever pitch now, the group sensation shifting from fear to a collective yearning for transformation, a moment which could leave a mark on their community forever. "Look around you," Emily signed, her movements vibrant and commanding. "This is what change looks like. This is the beginning of our stories intertwining. It's okay to be scared, but it's even more okay to reach out." A wave of energy washed over them as the crowd's expressions became resolute and full of life. For the first time, Mark could see not just individuals, but a united front ready to step into the light. As they faced the man, the warmth of bravery surged through Mark, wrapping him like a cozy blanket. Then, something unexpected happened. A glimmer of tears welled in his father's eyes. Just for a second, Mark caught a glimpse of vulnerability breaking through the wall built by his father's stoic demeanor. But before he could process that small shift, a loud crash shattered the moment. A nearby easel toppled, papers scattered like fallen leaves across the floor, snapping their collective focus. "Are we really ready?" a voice called out from the back, echoing the fears that still lingered. "Can we truly step forward, or is this all just talk?" Mark felt the room hold its breath. Every heartbeat echoed the weight of that question. Would they take the leap, or fall back into the comfort of doubt? And as the tension simmered, he realized there was no going back. "Let's find out," he responded, nodding towards Emily and the growing energy around them. Would this be their moment to leap? Or had the weight of history pulled them just short? The challenge was set. The way ahead shimmered, and every moment bore the promise of change. A stirring silence hung over the room, heavy with anticipation. Mark felt the electric charge in the air as the question lingered, floating like a fragile boat on a stormy sea. Emily stood by his side, every bit the beacon of courage, her eyes wide and glimmering with pride. "Are we really ready?" the voice echoed again. This time it was quieter, searching, almost pleading. The doubt hung thick, but Mark was determined to dispel it. "We can't just talk," he called back, his voice steady. "We need to act, right now." A chorus of murmurs erupted. The crowd was sensing something. The fear spilled into the words of others, spoken but also unspoken, intertwining like the very stories they had shared. Mark took a moment to gather his thoughts, scanning the sea of faces, now alight with a mixture of fear, hope, and uncertainty. He took a deep breath, centering himself. We all have our fears, But what if we chose to face them together instead? What if we reached out, took those first steps? Change doesn't happen in isolation. As he spoke, he noticed timid nods beginning to form, an encouraging sign. Imagine for one moment, Emily signed, her movements fluid and passionate, what we could achieve if we all embraced this, if we offered our hands when others falter, if we became each other's strength. This is our moment. The energy shifted once more, rising like the tide. Then, in the back of the room, a woman stood up, her voice trembling yet bold as she spoke. "I've held myself back from the things I love for too long." Her eyes sparkled as she rallied her courage. "I painted once. I dreamed of being an artist, but I let fear hold me back. I want to paint again." A ripple of applause cascaded through the audience. Another voice joined. "I want to pursue music." Then another chimed in. "What about dance?" The room erupted. One by one, stories poured forth like rain after a drought. Each yearned for dreams long buried. Mark felt tears rise in his throat. This wasn't just a room of faces anymore. It was a family, united in longing and determination. Everyone began sharing their gifts, their hopes, their fears, sparking a fire of inspiration that could not be extinguished. Mark's gaze turned to his father, who had settled into a thoughtful silence. Mark realized he had an opportunity here, not just for the others, but for his own heart. "Dad," he said, voice softening, "what's your dream?" The air thickened again. All eyes turned toward his father, who could have left the room, but stayed rooted in place. And then the cracks in the fortress began to show. I always wanted to travel, to see the world beyond my office." His voice faded, but the emotion was clear, the weight of a lifetime of restrictions crashing down. Mark took a step forward, reaching toward the man who had shaped so much of his life. "Dad," he said, voice softening, "what's your dream?" The air thickened again. All eyes turned toward his father, who could have left the room, but stayed rooted in place. And then the cracks in the fortress began to show. I always wanted to travel, to see the world beyond my office." His voice faded, but the emotion was clear, the weight of a lifetime of restrictions crashing down. Mark took a step forward, reaching toward the man who had shaped so much of his life. "Then go, live that dream. You taught me to fight for what matters to us. It's time to let the world see the real you." For a moment, an uncertain stillness fell again. Then, from the corners of the room, came claps. Slowly at first, but then like a storm, growing into a roaring wave. His father looked around, his expression transforming from one of surprise to pride, finally embracing a vulnerability he had long concealed. "This is just the beginning," Emily signed, her beaming smile brightening the somber truths they faced. "Together we move forward, together we leap." Yet, just as that surge of energy threatened to lift them into new territories, the world outside seemed to clash with their moment. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, penetrating the warmth of hope. "What does that mean for us?" came a whisper from the crowd. Mark's heart sank slightly as he felt a chill edge through the warmth. Questions hung heavy again, the crowd's energy shifting like sand. Facing adversity was one thing, but what if the world wanted to pull them right back? All eyes turned to him again. Could they weather this storm, or would it shatter the fragile bonds they had just begun to form? Mark took a breath, his voice steady and anchored. "Then we face it, together. Whatever it is, we stand united." But as he spoke, uncertainty flickered in his mind. What challenges lay ahead that they could not yet see? And suddenly, a more profound question emerged. Were they truly ready to challenge not only their fears, but the very circumstances of the world outside? The tension electrified the air once more, a moment poised on the edge of transformation, waiting to dive or fall. The sirens grew louder, merging with the pounding of Mark's heart. He scanned the room, noticing the varying expressions etched on the faces around him. Some were still hopeful, others looked bewildered. Emily's hands hovered in the air, poised, as if she were deciding between signaling reassurance or addressing the fearfully spiraling thoughts. "Look," Mark said, trying to lighten the air. "Fear is a familiar friend by now. Remember when we huddled together, sharing our stories, feeling like our dreams were penned in ink on paper? This is just part of the journey." A chorus of nods and murmurs echoed back, and that tightened knot in his chest began to loosen slightly. But just then his father spoke up. "Mark, you have no idea what the outside world can throw at us. It's chaotic. It's unpredictable." His voice wavered slightly, but a resolve emerged. "I've been hiding away, working my safe routine. I'm scared. What if we try only to find everything crumbles around us?" With a heavy yet determined heart, Mark took a step closer to his dad. "Maybe it's time to crumble those walls," he said softly. "Maybe it's time to take risks for the sake of everything we want for ourselves. Together. Isn't that what we've been speaking about?" The room fell silent, the collective thinking a tapestry of fear and determination. Then, inspired by Mark, a young man stood and spoke out. "My father lost his job last year, and we've been struggling. But instead of hiding, we're learning to create things together, making furniture out of old wood. It's hard, but it's teaching us to dream again. And we support each other," a woman chimed in. "Not just through our fears, but through our reinterpretation of what family is. We can redefine our lives." Gradually, a ripple of voices joined in, positivity flowing like a fresh stream, washing over their earlier doubt. Mark felt an uplift in his spirit. They were rooting for one another. "Maybe we can brainstorm ways to connect with each other better," Emily suggested, her expressive hands drawing the strained attention of the crowd. Back to unity and solutions. "We could start a community project, maybe art classes or a music jam. Something that makes us create together, building off our dreams while navigating these challenges." Mark's nervous heartbeat steadied. He knew they needed it. A small beacon of light in an uncertain world. "Let's not wait any longer," Mark said, his voice rising above the level of urgency in the room. "Let's outline a way forward, right now." As the crowd began to sputter with ideas, people clapped, shouted names of potential projects, excitement surfacing like bubbles in a soda. Mark felt an overwhelming sense of pride swell within him, not just for himself or Emily, but for the interconnectedness they had created, the truth emerging from shared relationships. Yet, in the midst of hope, the sound of a crash echoed from outside, a reminder that chaos was still on the doorstep. "What was that?" came a gasp from the back, and an anxious hush fell upon them all once again, dark clouds looming. Mark felt a shiver creep through him, the thrill of potential still vibrant, but feeling almost supercharged with ambiguity. "We cannot let distractions pull us back down," he said finally. "When the world pushes, we push back harder, right?" The crowd murmured affirmatively, but Mark could sense they were now confronting what it meant to stand firm. He clutched his father's arm, grounding him. It was not just about fighting external chaos, it was about cultivating resilience within themselves. Then suddenly the lights flickered. The sirens blared once more, and then a voice rang through the loudspeakers outside. "Attention! We are asking everyone to stay calm. There is a situation developing outside. Please remain indoors." Fear permeated the atmosphere again, floating in as easily as the tension between them had just lifted. Mark's heart raced. They had dared to step forward, but how would they face what awaited them outside? Were they truly prepared to stand strong as a family against the world's uncertainties? The moment stretched, fragile and fiercely hopeful. Mark looked around, eyes searching, catching glimpses of minds racing. Would they find a way to support each other when real challenges pressed against them? "It's time to trust in each other," he said, facing the crowd once more. "We've opened the door to our dreams. Let's not let fear shut it again." And just as murmurs of agreement began to swell, a loud crash rattled the windows nearby, causing everyone to jump. Their fragile hope now bracing itself against an unforeseen storm. What lay beyond the door? And could they truly weather the chaos together? The walls of the room felt like they were closing in. Mark's heart pounded loudly in his chest, a rhythmic reminder of the fear rippling through the crowd. The adrenaline surged, mixing with the hope they had just rallied. "Stay strong," he thought to himself as he took a deep breath, forcing the moment to stretch beyond the noise. Then, from the back of the room, a young woman stood, her hands trembling as she raised them, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on her. "We can't live in fear," she said, her voice wavering. "We have to face whatever is out there. We came together for a reason." Her determination anchored the crowd, drawing murmurs of agreement. Mark shifted his gaze toward Emily, who had stepped beside him, catching the wave of energy building in the room. "We need to stand together," she said, her eyes sparkling with defiance. "What if we opened ourselves to the possibilities? Let's let that crash we heard remind us that we can be strong together." As if on cue, the room seemed to breathe in unison, a collective decision to face not just their fears, but whatever chaos loomed on the other side of the door. The air crackled with purpose. "Let's not give up," someone shouted, and the energy surged in response, hope, fearless and vibrant, pulsing in their hearts. "Okay," Mark shouted, feeling inspired, "we're going to take action. We're going to meet whatever is out there with courage. Let's do this as a family. You have each other, and no one is alone in this." The crowd erupted into a chorus of voices, shouting ideas, rallying one another into a movement. They formed bonds, hands reached across the gaps, and hearts opened. It engulfed him in warmth, a reminder that kindness and connection were their greatest shields. And yet the gnawing uncertainty tugged at his gut. Outside their sanctuary, the world was spiraling into fury. The sirens wailed, loud and relentless. "What do we do?" a voice cracked, breaking through the hum of excitement. A reminder that fear never left, it morphed, hid, then struck back. Mark jumped on that. "We take charge, no more hiding." He clenched his fist in the air, each word fueled with energy. "We break through our barriers. We don't just wait for the world to come crashing in. We demand a response. We create. We show them we are more than fear." The intensity of his words lit a fire beneath the crowd. A low roar began to swell. Voices joined together as they began to chant. It was electrifying, every syllable a step closer to feeling liberated. In that swelling tide of camaraderie, amidst the fervor, a small figure approached the group, a girl around the age of 8 with big eyes and an even bigger heart. She stepped forward and raised her hands. Some faces softened, recognizing her need to speak. As she signed, her expressions flourished with each gesture. "She's signing!" Emily gasped in awe, the girl's gestures filled with vibrant, joyful energy, transforming their fear into something magical. "What does she want to tell us?" Mark leaned into the moment, decoding her gentle flow. "She's saying we are all connected, regardless of our fears. We've survived because we have each other." A profound hush enveloped the crowd. They were all connected, his heart swelling with pride. The little girl beamed, her smile light as a feather. Wasn't that what they had been trying to express all along? Then, suddenly, a second crash came from outside, a loud thud that shattered the fragile tranquility they had built. The tension set heavy and thick, fear creeping back as uncertainty hovered. "Stay close," Mark shouted, heart racing again, but this time with new momentum. They had to push through, together. Remember that girl. She holds the secret. We're stronger than we realize. But could they hold their ground as shadows approach? What were they really up against, and how could they protect their newfound bond? As the crowd braced themselves, ready to confront the unknown, the echoes of the little girl's signs remained in the air. They now had a choice. Resilience flickered before them, a light threading through darkness. Would that be enough? For the first time, Mark felt a strange sense of determination mingled with fear. He wouldn't turn back, and he wouldn't let them either. What awaited them outside the door? And would courage ignite hope in a world full of chaos? The atmosphere shifted sharply as the tension in the room thickened like fog rolling in. Mark felt the weight of his own heartbeat, a drum echoing the uncertainty in the air. The loud crash that had just pierced the walls seemed to reverberate through their very souls. "Everyone, listen!" he yelled, raising his voice above the murmurs that followed the noise. "We need to stay focused. Whatever's happening out there, we can meet it with what we have right here, our unity." He scanned the faces around him, catching glimpses of fear, but also fierce resolve. Emily stood firm by his side, her eyes shining in the dim light. "We've come this far together. Now is the time to prove it," she urged, her voice steady and comforting. Mark nodded, feeling the energy build again, a wave swelling under his feet. The little girl, still standing at the front, looked up at him, her innocent eyes wide with understanding. Did she sense the tension? Could she hear the crashing sounds that were bringing waves of dread back to life? "Remember what she showed us," Mark said, pointing gently toward the girl. "We are connected, and together we are stronger than any fear out there. Her signs are a reminder of what we can achieve if we stand side by side." He stepped forward to address the room, and as he did, he felt a spark flicker within himself, igniting something greater than fear. He exaggerated the urgency in his voice. "If we stand together, nothing, absolutely nothing can break us. So let's face whatever comes next and hold on tight to each other." The murmurs quieted down, faces turned toward him, a silent agreement rolling through the crowd, pooling around their feet. Energy surged anew like electricity. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a family forged in the fire of chaos. As if on cue, the little girl moved closer, her hands rising gracefully once again. Mark watched, captivated, as she began to sign a new message. It was a beautiful fluidity, a dance of hands that seemed to encapsulate hope and strength. "What is she saying now?" Emily whispered, leaning in. Mark concentrated. "She's saying, trust. It's like she's telling us to trust in ourselves and in each other. To have faith that together we can create a future, no matter how dark it seems right now." The crowd started to murmur again, a collective hum of understanding. Mark could feel the fear beginning to dissipate, like mist under the sun. Then another crash rang out, louder than before. It cut through the renewed moment of connection. This time, it was accompanied by a low growl, almost mechanized, as if the unseen chaos was now looking directly at them, taunting them. "Stay strong, stay focused," Mark roared, his heart racing as he gestured toward the door. "We didn't come this far to back down now. We have each other. Let's show whatever is out there that we're not afraid." His words became a rallying cry as they echoed back through the room, igniting a fire among the people. The little girl's expression shifted again to one of determination, and the crowd matched it. They weren't just reacting anymore, they were ready to take action. But just then, the door trembled violently. The crowd froze, anxiety gripping each heart. Mark's mind raced, questioning what could possibly come through that threshold. What monsters were they prepared to face? Could they really hold their ground? Would their bonds be enough to withstand whatever lurked beyond? As he stood at the front, adrenaline surged, and Mark instinctively stepped forward. A voice echoed in his mind. They had come together for a reason, and it was now or never. But just as he thought they were urged to sprint ahead, the door buckled as if something colossal was pushing from the other side. What was going to break through? Would their courage be enough to hold back the tide of fear? As uncertainty swirled around him, one thing remained crystal clear. This was only the beginning. Would they rise or would they fall? And could their humanity withstand the chaos that awaited them? The door shuddered violently, breaths catching in the room as the crowd held tight to each other, hearts racing in unison. In that moment, all doubts flickered like candle flames, but hope, fierce and unwavering, stood tall amidst the chaos. Mark's heart thumped hard against his chest, a steady rhythm pulsing through the air, igniting courage in those around him. "We've faced our fears together," he shouted, urging every soul present to lean into their growing strength. Each face before him reflected a mixture of determination and vulnerability, a beautiful collage of humanity ready to stand their ground. "Whatever comes through that door, we meet it together." Emily's voice rang out, rich with conviction. Her vibrant hands transitioned into a graceful dance of sign, intertwining hope and strength into a tapestry of reassurance. It resonated through the crowd, filling the space with an energy that transcended fear. The collective breath of the room whispered a silent agreement, a promise to face the storm shoulder to shoulder. "Let's remember, we're not alone in this," Mark emphasized, feeling the momentum shift. "This is our time to rise. Let's show the world what unity can bring." With every jolt of adrenaline, eyes began to glisten with understanding. This was no longer just about them. They represented a chorus of suppressed voices longing for empowerment. Just then, something shifted in the crowd. Ripples of courage began to surge forth, ignited by lived experiences shared moments before. "I want to reclaim my voice," a woman shouted from the back, her spirit fierce. "I've held back my art for too long." "Me too," echoed another voice, inspired and emboldened. "Let's not let fear dictate our futures any longer." One by one, faces transformed from fear to resolve. Mark smiled as the energy surged, a tide of dreams rising, encompassing the fears with a blanket woven from hope. And then, just like that, the door blew wide open. Light flooded in, piercing through the darkness that had threatened to engulf them. All eyes turned as a swirl of chaos poured through the threshold. Confusion, noise, and the unknown slipped in along with a rush of fresh air. Mark braced himself, ready to step into the chaos. But what floated through surprised him. They weren't shadows or threats, but the vibrant faces of community members pushing their way inside. "What's happening?" a voice called out, bewildered yet filled with anticipation. "Come join us," someone else shouted, reaching out. "We're all here together." In unison, realization dawned. The power of unity was a force to awaken. People who too had felt lost in their own fears, now daring to break the silence. They poured through the door, creating a wave of support that flooded the once sterile office space. Mark's heart soared. "Together we can change this," he proclaimed, seeing the ripples extend beyond their circle. "This is more than a moment. This is our movement." Emily stepped forward, her graceful hands weaving an intricate pattern, urging everyone to feel it. "Let's dance this out. Let's celebrate this awakening." As music began to fill the atmosphere, bodies started to sway, hands reached out, and hearts embraced the melodies of laughter, connection, and shared liberation. It was not just noise. It was a symphony of people rediscovering themselves. Mark glanced at his father, who stood at the edge, awestruck but also softened by the moment of transformation around him. Fear shifted in his father's eyes, replaced with curiosity and glimpses of acceptance. The walls forged by expectations shattered. At the center of the room, a new energy pulled together each soul, creating unity from the frayed edges of uncertainty. "Each of you is vital," Mark shouted over the growing rhythm. "This is where we stitch our stories together." The spirit of the crowd began to rise, voices merging into a beautiful chorus of celebration as individuals claimed their space, singing out their dreams. Each note resonated through the air, creating a bridge of heartbeats stronger than the fear that had once divided them. They danced. Some moved to the rhythm of recovered dreams, while others spun with a fervor to drive away the shadows. It ignited a profound shift. The energy wrapped around Mark, filled with warmth, lighting the path ahead. And in that whirlwind of shared experiences and laughter, everything began to transform. The chaos that had threatened their unity became the backdrop of their resilience, an unspoken testimony of their journey toward authenticity in the face of opposition. Mark took a breath and surveyed the room, his heart swelling not just with gratitude, but with a sense of purpose that was tangible. "From this moment on," he declared, his voice filled to the brim with emotion, "we are no longer just individuals, we are a movement. We embrace our stories, our dreams, and we dare to step forward together." As cheers erupted and this new family danced into their next chapter of life, Mark felt a profound sense of hope and strength. They had faced the chaos head-on, emerging stronger, unified, and ready to write their own narratives. This was just the beginning, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to join our journey. We have more incredible stories waiting just for you. Hit that like button now if this inspiring transformation resonated with you. Comment below with your thoughts and feelings about this journey. And don't wait, not even one more second, to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting moment. Your support helps us keep the light shining brightly.